Welcome to CAE Pilot Podcast, a podcast that brings together aviation professionals to discuss life as a pilot, training, and career advice. You can find us at cae.com/CAE Pilot-podcast or subscribe to our show on your audio podcasting platform of choice. You can also find our video podcast on our YouTube channel.
Welcome to another episode of the CAE Pilot Podcast. Today we're going to take you on an adventure. Last week we introduced you to a ferry pilot, and this week we're going to introduce you to an air ambulance pilot who just happens to work in French Polynesia. We told you these were going to be dream jobs. So I'm super happy to welcome Tetu Kuro to the podcast and coming to us, I believe, from French Polynesia. How's it going?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Happy to be here.
So we got to start with this. What's it like to live in what everybody else on Earth considers to be paradise?
Yeah, well, it will be pretty normal, I guess. Huh? Maybe some people expect maybe to be like when you just call, on the beach and stuff. But no, it's a normal city. But yeah, close to the beach, so we get to go to the beach and stuff pretty easily. But apart from that, it's I would say normal.
Normal for you is paradise for us, so, especially those of us who haven't traveled anywhere and have been locked up. But it's great for you to be with us. And we're going to start maybe with the question that we tend to ask everybody on the podcast, and that's, where did your love for flying or your passion for flying, how did that come about?
Yeah, I don't know where it come from. From a young age, I was really attracted by aviation. We live near an airport in Moorea, the sister island, with my parents. And so I was used to seeing all the aircraft taking off, landings all day long. And it was just the Twin Otter that were going in Moorea back in the days. And now the ATR go there. But so from a young age, I don't know, I was just attracted by it. And maybe the fact that I was, in a remote island, maybe deep inside, I wanted to get out in a way, to be able to get away. So it was, it started like this. So, and then the more I grew up and the more the passion grows and then here it is.
And eventually you ended up at CAE in Belgium.
CAE. Yeah, that's right.
And tell us a bit about your training and how that was.
So school-wise, I had a friend who was a pilot, so on Air Tahiti Nui, so he get to choose the school, and then he advised me to go with this FTO. And school-wise, it was great. It was CAE Brussels, which is a smaller center compared to CAE Oxford and Phoenix as well. So it was really a nice atmosphere there with good friends that we are still in contact now. So it's pretty cool. The training was really great with great instructors. And it just went really well. We did our 7 months of ground school and then went to Arizona, 7 months as well, and then back to Belgium. So really nice experience for me and to see something else, coming from Tahiti, such a small place. So it was really, life-changing, I would say.
And what's it like being a pilot in Tahiti? Maybe tell us a little bit about Tahiti for those who don't know it, and then a little bit about what it's like to operate in what is a very special environment.
Yeah, well, it's true. Most of the time we have nice weather. We do 99%, I would say, visual approaches, so which is pretty cool. Weather-wise, it's like any other tropical places. So we'll have nice weather and some really big build-ups of CBs by the afternoon. So that can be quite challenging as well. You might expect to have really nice weather, but the weather degrades. We have really big rainfalls and some thunderstorms as well. But we'll get some some icing on flight levels that we usually fly. But then once we descend, it's okay. It's all gone. So I would say that will be the most challenging part, is that it's just the heavy CBs that can build up on the afternoon. But other than that, it's we will never have like a Cat 2 or Cat 3 with going down to the minima and you don't see the runway. It will be mainly due to the rain. So.
And people might not know that Tahiti is made up of, I believe it's 120 islands.
It's 120 islands. Only 47 of them are deserved by the plane. So they have a runway. Yeah, it's composed of 120 islands, and the airline I worked for was really the link to bring all those people that needed medical assistance back in Tahiti. And they know that the aircraft is really a key element to just make this society work here. We cannot do it anywhere else. So.
I guess I imagine that not every island has a hospital, so that link really is. When we say air ambulance, it's not just. I think in North America we think air ambulance for very critical cases and things like that, but it must be quite different in your case.
Oh yeah, you might have for everything, like the case that need the least assistance, I would say, or not immediate assistance. They will have to take the normal planes that are scheduled once a week, or it depends on the islands. But the ones then that need the really quick assistance, that they will call the airline, this airline in particular, to go and get them.
And
so, yeah.
When you're carrying a patient and knowing that sometimes it can be critical, what does that do to your level of stress?
Yeah, it's pretty stressful. Huh? You will get called during the day, and they say, okay, you need to go get these children that had an accident whatsoever. So you take it not personally, but you have, it's stressful, but you have to try as well to detach yourself from every people that you go and get, because otherwise you will take too much on you. And so that's why they told me from the beginning. They told us, like, okay, you will see some stuff, but try to detach yourself and do your job. And but it's really sometimes I saw some things. I was like, okay, this is really critical, and at that time that you really made a difference, and it's really rewarding, but it can be really stressful if you take it personally, and sometimes you just can't land, or for whatever reason, the weather, you think about it, but then you have to say, well, hey, that's life, and that's it. But
how do you cope with the idea that you have to be somewhere urgently, and you sit there, you've got your checklists and all this, the temptation at times to just get through it quickly must sort of be there. How do you stay focused on taking the time you need despite having this urgent need in the back?
Once this will pretty much happen in the beginning when you go and get the patient, because we carry doctors on board. So once actually we have the guy, then it's more relaxed, because he has the care that he need, or at least part of it. But once we go and get him, it's where it can happen that the stress factor to go and get here as fast as we could. But thankfully we've flown on Beechcraft here, and it's a pretty nice aircraft with the checklist goes fast. There is not a lot of programmation to go. It's pretty much like a big Cessna, so you just go on board and do the pre-flight checklist, and then up you go. So it goes pretty fast in a way. And
while we're talking about the Beechcraft, what's that aircraft like to fly? We've spoken to a lot of airline pilots, a lot of 737, some 747, so a couple of business jet pilots as well. But what's it like to fly King Air?
Oh, it's a great aircraft. I really loved it. Up till now, it's the one of my favorite aircraft. I haven't done it a lot yet, hopefully, but it's a great aircraft with great performance. He could fly up to flight level 350. And it goes pretty fast as well. So for French Polynesia with runways of sometimes 800 meters, 900 meters. It's a perfect aircraft, and yeah, it's like a big Cessna. I just say you just go in and turn it on and start and go. So it's a pretty cool aircraft, and I think it's a great transition from flight school and where I'm at now at my new airline, which is more operational. Mm-hmm. It's more line like every other line airline, but. It was a really great transition from flight school to that. It really gives you the opportunity to fly and to build up that experience.
And tell us a little bit about how an air ambulance flight is organized. How do you get the call?
Like roster-wise?
Well, not roster-wise, but more like you get the call. How does the doctor show up? Like, how does the whole thing logistically come together?
So, yeah, once you get a call, you're scheduled to take off 45 minutes after that. So you need to live pretty close by, because it's 45 minutes takeoff, but you still need to prepare the plane before that. So they expect you to be here in like 15 minutes, which is doable. When you live in Tahiti, the cities around, you're at the airport in about 10-15 minutes if there's no traffic. So you get the call, you go there. We have to split jobs, otherwise it will take too much time. So the captain will prepare all the papers, like we'll check the weather, the NOTAMs, he will file the flight plans, do the logs, and all that. And the first officer will prepare the aircraft, so he will do the walk around. He will start the aircraft on batteries, all that preparation, do the test. Then they meet on board. While they do that, the doctors came. So usually they come in at around in about 40 minutes. And once they arrive, we go. So we brief on board about the weather and stuff, and then we go.
Do you have a briefing with the doctors so that I guess my question is, does a patient's condition affect anything on your end?
It might affect, when it will be like diving accident. So it's pretty much the decays that will affect our flights, because then we'll have to fly at cabin level 0. So we'll have to stay quite low in a way to maintain that. But other than that, they will tell us what we're going to get, of course. But I say get like it's something, but. He tells us the case, and rather than that, he doesn't give us really a lot of details on that part. He will just tell us if it's really urgent or not. But then they know on their part, when they get the call from their island, they will first make like a judgment call on whether we need to get them or not. So they will just tell us if it's urgent or diving accident, but that's it. Other than that, we know, but not in details.
And I guess then, when you arrive, you're met by an ambulance and off they go. Have you ever had the chance to speak to anyone that you've flown as a patient to hear or to find out how they've done afterwards, or?
No, actually, I just one time I heard about his condition afterwards, but I've never really went there personally to check on them. I don't know either some guys that have done it, but it's so small here as well, so you will definitely get to know some of the guy in the island, and get to know their condition afterwards. So. But we don't. I personally, I've never done that.
I guess it's part of keeping a professional distance as well.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. It's just
What would you say are the challenges of flying in Tahiti?
Challenges. Well, yeah, it's what I've talked a bit in the beginning. It's just the weather-wise, you have some sea breeze, some rains on the afternoon, but it depends as well on the season.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, it will be different compared to the Europe and USA and Asia in the way that we don't have a lot of equipments. We have one control center, which is Tahiti, that he controls like the whole French Polynesia, which is as big as Europe. It's a lot of uncontrolled airspace, so we'll do a lot of a visual approach and an integration into the circuits like at school. You just go at 1,500 feet, check the runway, check the wind, and land. It will be a lot of that. We have one ILS, which is in Tahiti. We have 2 VORs in the whole French Polynesia. We have so a lot of NDBs approach and a lot of visual approach because they don't have anything. They don't have puppies. They just have a strip here and off you land. But it's part of the fun, I guess. That's why we love what we do, and we love it here because it's so different. And it will be a really fun flying experience.
So
it's a really fun flying experience.
You've flown obviously in the States. You've flown also in Europe. Out of the 3, where do you prefer to fly?
Well, I would say in the US, though. It's just the way the traffic is managed, the regulation, all that. It's much easier, much easier. And then, I would say the US. But talking about ATCs and stuff, it's the US. But then if you talk about the scenery in the background, of course, Tahiti, it's great. In French Polynesia, you see some beautiful things. And I'm sure in Europe, from where I've flown, it was on a Diamond 40, so I didn't see much. But I'm sure the guys that flies there, they see beautiful things as well. So at the end of the day, it's you have your line to follow, and whether it's in Europe or Tahiti, and it's a passion job, so you just love it. Huh? It's always beautiful from up there. So
yeah, I was going to say you've got the best view out of your office, I think, of probably just about anybody I know. What about the airfields and the facilities? Obviously, we're not talking about large operations like you have in the States. What's it like operating in and out of these smaller places?
Yeah, there's nothing. Huh? You just land there. It's just small. It's like a little tiny house where usually most of the time when we go for a medical evacuation, it's closed because it's not a regular flight. So they just come in by the fence. I would say there is just a little opening on the fence, and they come on the stand, and then we just do. We take him and then we go. So it's really different. There's nothing when you arrive. It's not a big facility. You just have one big fire extinguisher of 50 kilograms here. There's no like big, firefighters everywhere. No, it's not like that. So yeah, it's different. But
so it sounds like you have to be independent or autonomous in a lot of ways.
Yeah, definitely.
And would you say that flying in French Polynesia has allowed you to develop your flying skills more than you would have, say, if you were flying in Europe or the States?
I would say so, but it's not really due to the place. It's just the operation we do. It requires a lot of flying, of course, and due to the lack of facilities on the runways and stuff, we just do a lot of flyings, and we fly. We could go up to 4 or 5 flights a day. So yeah.
And what is the most challenging approach in landing that you would typically operate in Tahiti?
It would be depending on the wind. Like you have we always have constant wind, which is the Alizé. It's called here, and depending of where it's coming from, you have some places that will be really challenging. Like you can get really a turbulent approach on final. Otherwise, the Marquesas Island, which are mountainous and all that. So there is one place where it's the runway. It's in the valley, so you really have to get into the valley to get there. But it will really depend on the wind that you have that day. That will make it difficult. Sometimes, like the smaller airport you will go, which cannot be quite challenging normally, will be really challenging with that specific wind. Thankfully, there is a couple of them that we know, and of course, when there is this wind, we anticipate the threat and deal with it.
You mentioned that you recently went from the King Air to, I believe it's the ATR, in a more airline type operation. What's that transition been like?
It's been really smooth, actually. Like the previous airline I've flown with was a branch of that airline now. So and they have quite the same characteristics in a way that they have the same speed, basically. So it was really a smooth transition. Even the ATR, it's not a complex aircraft compared to the Airbus type, Boeing type. So it has this quite the same avionics as the Beechcraft. So it was really a nice transition, and I knew already then the islands we were flying to. So it was just getting to know the procedures of that specific airline and to get with it. Other than that, it was a really cool transition. And all the guys they get from this air ambulance type operation to the ATR, they have good returns because the guys, they already know the things. So you really just has to learn the ATR.
It must be nice to. It must be nice to have healthy passengers rather than.
But actually, they can complain more. That's the thing.
Oh well, that's the perfect lead into my next question. Do you have any funny stories about flying in Tahiti?
Not especially. Like passenger or air ambulance?
Yeah, well, passengers, anything. We know that the Tahitian people have nice characters and they're funny and.
Yeah, I would say, it's just mainly like we do every when there is a vacation of at least 2 weeks, the state puts some special flights to bring back the child in their islands, because there are not every island has a public school as well, so they need to go into this specific island to get education. But one is the vacation, they bring them back to their islands. So we'll do some charter flight for them, which can be pretty fun. You only have kids on board. Of course, there is some adults to keep them in place, but they will come with their their big speakers, and it will be like a party on board. So it's pretty funny.
Sounds like a flying school bus.
Yeah, basically it's that. So with my current airline now, it's okay because we do have flight attendants to check them. But when it was with the previous airline for the smaller islands, we didn't have any flight attendants, so you will have to check on them every 10-15 minutes to see if they don't break something, or they will always go and pull out the life jacket, this stuff.
As long as they don't inflate it.
Yeah.
What's the longest flight you would operate in French Polynesia?
It will be, if we do a direct flight to the Gambier Island, so it will be 4 hour, close to 4 hour flights.
Still impressive. And the shortest one?
The shortest one will be not even 10 minutes.
It's like Papeete to Moorea kind of thing?
Like Papeete to Moorea or Ahe to Manihi. It's like really close islands, which it's pretty challenging. It's a really challenging flight, especially on the ATR with the electronic checklist. Like the pilot monitoring is constantly just validating all those checklists before we land. So it's fun.
Oh, that's very cool. So we often do a Mythbuster section in our podcast. So we'll ask you a couple of them. You can tell us if these are true or not. So pilots in Tahiti wear funny uniforms that usually consist of Bermudas and short-sleeve white shirts.
It will be true for the air ambulance part. Like you'll be flying on with a polo and just a Bermuda and shoes, obviously. Yeah, but for all the other operation type, it's a normal uniform, just without the tie and we don't have a jacket, of course. But yeah.
I guess you've answered this one, but pilots in French Polynesia fly barefoot.
Well, no, not yet. Not yet.
Flying in Tahiti is much more difficult and is riskier than in other places around the world.
Well, I wouldn't say so. It has its risk, like every other. Once you're in an aircraft, you have some risk anyway. So I wouldn't say so. It's just different.
But you look like a pretty relaxed guy to start off with. So
yeah, so that's why I don't get nervous really quick. So
pilots receive flower necklaces or leis after landing at their destination.
We do, actually, not everywhere, but yeah, some islands we do get some flower necklace. And
the symbolism of that is welcome, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, it's just their way of thanking them for bringing tourists or sometimes just fruit, like natural vegetables, fresh vegetables, and all of that. So they know the aircraft it's a key element, and some islands they reward us.
It's kind of ironic, though, that you're flying in this beautiful tropical place, yet the flying sounds very similar to flying in northern Canada.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's an aircraft, and once you're on the air, you're on the air, and then it's pretty much the same. It will be really changing maybe once you get to the island, and on the ground, the operation on the ground, it's really here where you really see the difference compared to Europe or Canada or the US. But other than that, flying wise, it's a plane in the air. So
look at this guy. Flying is flying, no problem. Flying in Tahiti is easy because the weather is always perfect. You've talked about the weather a little bit.
Yeah, with 99% visual approaches. That would be my answer.
And how many sunny days a year in Tahiti? Probably 364?
Yeah, or a bit less than that. Maybe you'll have 30 days of rain. But yeah, basically you can have both in the same day. So big rain and sunny sky in the afternoon. So.
You don't need to speak English to fly in French Polynesia. Everything is done as French.
Up till I would say a couple of years ago, yeah. It was all in French. All the procedures was in French. The ATC, of course, here it's in French. You can do both. Sometimes we do it in English just to practice a little bit. But now it's separate. We do both. So everything that interact with the aircraft will be in English. So all the checklist, all the procedures, all the SOPs are in English. But once we talk with the captain and the crew, it will be in French. So everything in French and ATC in French. It's just, once it interacts with the aircraft, that will be in English.
So I guess it's similar in that case to what it's like in France and I guess in Quebec as well.
Yeah, I would say so.
The last question I have for you then. We know that the pandemic has been particularly rough on the aviation industry. And there's students who, much like yourself, are at, CAE centers, sitting there thinking, wow, what do I do now?
Yeah.
What words of encouragement would you have for them?
Well, I would definitely tell them to keep going. They are here because it's a passion. All of us, we do this because we love it. And it will pass. It will pass. It's just, it might take 2 years, 3 years. That's what they say. Hopefully less. But as soon as it will pass, it will come back to where it was, and they will definitely need pilots. So you might have to wait a year maybe, but it will come back. Once it does, it will be just like old times.
And we're going to tell them to look you up to find a job in French Polynesia.
Yeah, sure.
Listen, Tetu, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to speak to you. I've had the chance to visit your beautiful country, and I would encourage anybody to check it out
sure.
because it is.
Honestly, to give a call if you come back.
Yeah, it's one of the most spectacular places I've ever been. And thank you for sharing your perspective on it. Really appreciate it.
Well, thanks you, and yeah, hopefully see you soon here.
Thanks. And I'd like to remind everybody, please check out airside.aero. That's our pilot community. Find lots of great resources and information for pilots, including our, the CV builder. There's lots of great content there that everyone will find very helpful. Thanks again, Tetu.
Thanks, bye.
All right, take care.
CAE Pilot Podcast is brought to you by CAE, the global leader in training for the civil aviation, defense and security, and healthcare markets. For more information, check out cae.com.